Hey everyone, it's Dylan from the Black Forest Wood Company, and this week we're going to show you how we got this finish on our 9-foot round Clara walnut table using our new Black Forest furniture oil and Black Forest ceramics. So this isn't what the actual cans are going to look like. This is our makeshift can because we don't have our properly labeled cans yet. They are showing up on Monday, ready to ship out to you guys. You can put your pre-orders in now. We'll have a link in the description to pre-order the oil, and you can also get some ceramic to go with it. So we're going to walk you guys through our full finishing process on this piece. I hope you guys learned something in this, and any questions that you guys have, just leave them below and we'll be sure to answer them. So the first step that we found really helps when doing one of these tables is to completely wipe all the dust off and just ensure that you've got everything 100% clean. So we're just using a microfiber cloth here today to get all that off. It might take a little while, but it is worth getting everything off. Another thing that you can do is just lightly dampen your cloth while you're doing this, and that kind of will help you pull off a little bit more. So the piece is all cleaned off now. We got basically all the dust off, and I'm ready to put the oil on. I've actually just dumped it in this glue bottle here. Reason being actually is so that I can apply a very small amount at one time. You can put it in a cup, but if it's in a cup, it's really easy to dump too much on. And sort of the key to this finish is making sure that you apply the perfect amount, which is not very much, because that way it's going to ensure that it can all cure properly. For application today, I'm using a Gem Industries polisher with a white Scotch-Brite on the bottom. That's an 11-inch pad. The white Scotch-Brites are rated around 1,000 grit. So we've sanded our piece to 320 today, so using that 1,000 grit pad isn't going to cause any damage here. So obviously, as you can see, this part of the process is a little bit tedious. It's very important that you spread the product very slowly and very thin because again, you don't want to put too much oil on that surface, especially when you have epoxy in the table. That's one thing I should mention, that the epoxy is probably more challenging to finish than just the wood is. The wood goes on pretty nice and it's pretty easy to get even in the end, but the epoxy, it is quite critical in ensuring that you have not too much product on there and that you spend a lot of time working it in with a buffer like I'm doing right now, just to get everything completely even. Like I can see some streaks in here right now that are a little bit shinier than the rest, so I just actually want to make sure that I'm going over those, getting rid of as much as I can before I'm moving on to the next section of the table. Now, not everybody obviously is going to have a fancy gem polisher like this, so you can also use your orbital sander, which you might even see me pull out later when I get to the final buff of this and I don't need such a large buffer to spread everything out. We just like the gem because it is more efficient for that initial spread and getting everything on the surface. But if you use your Mirka sander, your Festool sander, really any kind of orbital sander would do the same job as this to apply the oil on the surface. Another thing I'm doing here is I'm trying to do most of the wood first. Obviously there's a few spots where I can't help but hit some epoxy, like right here in this knot. I just find the wood gives you a little bit more open time, like to go back and buff it after, whereas you want to get the epoxy right on your first try with this, as I kind of strangle myself with the cord. Yeah, you want to get the epoxy really good on your first try and not have to go back too much and touch it up. So I'm just finishing off all the wooden sections, then I'll start with this side, put the oil on the epoxy, I'll finish off with that side, And then I'll probably spend a decent amount of time just going over the whole piece and making sure that everything's even. First coat is done. We had Sauger join in just because this piece is so large. So he kind of helped do the edges and a little bit of buffing while I was finishing off the top. But with one coat, you can see it's kind of a matte finish. And we do call our oil a monocoat oil, meaning that with a single coat, you can get all the protection you would need to call this a finished piece. In our case though, we do want a little bit more sheen out of the table. We don't have one up here right now, but we do want to get it shinier. So the next step for this piece is probably going to be, once it's dry, I'll use a gray pad to take out any imperfections. So we'll show you guys that next. And then after that, we'll put on the second coat. That should bring the sheen up. And then after that, we'll let it cure for about a week and we'll come back and put our Black Forest ceramic on. And then at that point, we should be good to put it on the base and ship it out to our client. So it is now the next day, and behind me I've got the table that we did the first coat on. So it's completely dry right now. Technically though, this would not still have a full cure. After about 2 weeks is a full cure. And that's really important, especially if you're going to be putting ceramic on afterwards. You do need to make sure you're aware of that cure cycle. But all that you have to wait to apply your next coat is 24 hours. There's no need to let it fully cure before you apply that next coat. Now, it looks pretty good right now actually. The quality of the finish that we have on here is quite good. There's not too many swirls in there. But one thing that I still like to do to try and get that perfect finish is actually use a gray pad on a Mirka sander. So they just stick directly on the Velcro interface. That's kind of what they look like. Hopefully that's focusing there. They're very similar to the white Scotch-Brites that you see us use to apply. It's just that these have more of a grit. So these are rated closer to around 800 grit, I believe, and they will actually scuff up that finished surface. So we're going to go over with our Mirka and the gray pads, completely scuff up this whole surface, and then we'll follow it up with our second coat. And the application for the second coat is essentially exactly the same as what we did for the first coat. We're just doing this extra step here before we put the finish on. Okay, so behind me there, we've got the table all gray padded. Probably took us about 15 minutes for the two of us, and keep in mind this is a very large piece. You don't want to go too hard with the gray pad because you can go right through your coat. And then we've just got some more finish right in this bottle here. And we're going to go ahead and do the exact same application on this that we did last time. Applying the second coat on here. So as you guys can see, this second coat has definitely made a big difference in terms of the sheen that we have on this piece. If I get down low here, you can see it's very reflective. And again, we have very few swirls when it comes to the resin. Because again, The wood's always going to be easier to finish than the resin. The resin's going to take more time, more patience, but we've got a pretty good job of it here. And if you guys follow those same steps that we showed you, you should have an easy time getting your finish to look like this as well. So we use the gem with a white Scotch-Brite to apply it on the surface, or a mica sander. If you notice for the second coat, I used the gem in the beginning to apply it on, and then when Sagar was doing the edges, I took his mica and used the mica for the final buff, just because it has a little bit higher RPM, so sometimes it can be easier to get the look that you're going for. But that's essentially it there, you guys. So now what we need to do is we need to leave this for about a week to 2 weeks to get closer to a full cure so that we can put the ceramic coating on. If it hasn't had at least a week of cure time, it's too early to put your ceramic on. So we'll leave this thing for at least a week. We'll come back and then we'll talk about our ceramic finishes that we can use on here. All right, so it has now been about a week since we put the last coat on. Again, it's very important to allow your epoxy to your finish, your oil, to fully cure before you go ahead and put your ceramic on. Thinking about it, it would also probably be important to let the epoxy cure. Don't try and finish it before it's cured. But what we've got here today is we have our Black Forest Ceramics base coat and we have our Black Forest Ceramics top coat. So we're going to start today with the base coat, and kind of a recommended system for these is you can do 2 coats of base coat with 1 coat of top coat. These products, to give you guys a little bit of information on them, the base coat has a 9H hardness, whereas the top coat has a 7H hardness. So the top coat is actually softer than the base coat. And the reasoning behind that is because the base coat is what's going to give you the majority of your protection, whereas the top coat is actually going to act as kind of a malleable layer over top of it that will protect this. So any damage that happens to the table, if you get any abrasions, it will likely just be affecting the top coat, which is soft and can buff out easily, which will then protect your base coat. When it comes to application on these products, there's really only 2 things you need. One of these foam applicator blocks and then one of these blue applicator pads. The way that this would work is you would wrap your pad around your block just like this. You would then open up the ceramic. There's a little dropper on there, and you're just going to put a few drops directly on the block, working them into the surface. This is a very large table, so I've got Sagar here again to help me apply the finish on this, and we're going to work it in sections. So we're actually going to get up on the table on this foam. We'll kind of do the middle section of the table first. We'll buff that off, then we'll get off the table, do our outside sections on the wood, and then we'll finish up and do our epoxy. So pretty straightforward application. You don't need a lot of the product, and as soon as it goes on, you're buffing it off with the microfiber. But we'll kind of explain as we go, and you'll also see that this ceramic's going to make a big difference in the sheen of the piece. So now the first coat of ceramic is all done on this. Obviously, if you have a smaller table, you don't have to climb on the table to apply your ceramic. The minimum time that you're going to want to wait between coats is 30 minutes. We're probably going to wait a little bit longer, maybe about an hour, hour and a half. Then we'll come back, do the exact same process. Either you could go straight to the top coat, or you could do another coat of base coat and then follow that by your top coat. We'll see what we do. I might just put the top coat on just so you guys can see both the different products. But that's about it for the piece right now. We'll leave it here to cure, and it has made a big difference in the sheen of this table, and the wood just looks a lot more rich now too. It's been almost 2 hours now since we've put our base coat on, and now we're gonna come along and put on the top coat. So after 2 hours, the ceramic is not fully cured. It wouldn't be ready for full use and exposure to liquids, but it is cured enough that you can put another coat on. So before I would actually use a piece, like even if you're only doing 1 coat, I would wait that full 24 hours or the next day until you're gonna go ahead and start using it to get the full protection. But it's no problem now to put that coat on, so we will apply this second coat here with the top coat, and that'll probably be it for this piece here. And what we actually like to do, since this is going to be for a client, is we'll send them a little maintenance kit. So they'll get a small thing of oil, they'll get a ceramic kit that they can use to touch things up, and then we also send some spray cleaner, just so that they're not using a harsh chemical on the table to clean it. So same exact process as the base coat. We'll go ahead and we'll put on our top coat. Then for the final coat, one thing that you can do that just sort of makes getting an even sheen a lot easier is to either use one of these Gem Industry polishers, or you could use any kind of orbital sander. You could use a cheaper polisher too, anything that you can get a microfiber to go on, and then just go over that whole surface. And if you do have any lap marks or anywhere that you've left a little bit of excess, this should do a good job evening everything out. So we have finally got our 9-foot round table all finished up with the Black Forest furniture oil and our Black Forest ceramics. So I'll kind of just real quick go over what our process was. This piece was sanded to 320 grit. We then did 1 coat of the Black Forest furniture oil. We then scuffed it up with a gray pad in between, put on another coat of the furniture oil. We then waited about a week and came back and did 1 coat of our Black Forest ceramic base coat, and then another coat the same day of our Black Forest ceramic top coat. So we'll put that all on the screen here in order so you guys can take a screenshot or something. But you can go on our website right now to pre-order your Black Forest furniture oil. Our orders are going to begin shipping out next week, and the ceramic's already available, so you guys can order that as well. But we really, really appreciate your support. We've already had a whole bunch of pre-orders on Instagram, which means a lot to us. So thank you guys for that. I hope you guys enjoyed our tutorial. And if there's any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys next week.